first guest that's going to come up right now, Nicole Willett. Nicole serves as the Education Director and Steering Committee member for the Mars Society, the world's largest Humans to Mars advocacy group. Nicole is a full-time astronomy instructor at Benedictine Military School in Savannah, Georgia. She maintains an education website called education.marssociety.org with regular blog entries. She has written and contributed to many e-zines, books, and websites regarding Mars research and Humans to Mars advocacy. Nicole helps to coordinate and organize the annual Mars Society conventions, including this year's convention in Washington, D.C., September 22nd through the 25th at the Catholic University of America. Keep an eye out for her book. She's in the process of writing an upcoming novel titled Soul, a Martian adventure and love story. I want to thank Nicole for taking some time tonight on her busy weekend. She's a very busy lady talking about Mars. Without any further delay, let's get her on the line. Nicole, good evening. Welcome to K-Talk and the Fringe Radio Show. Nicole, are you there? Hello, Nicole. Oh, let's see. I think we might have lost Nicole. Hold on one second. Let's get her back on the line. Hang tight for 1 second. Nicole, is that you?
Yes, sorry. I don't know what happened. I could hear you perfectly. That was a great intro. Thank you.
I don't know. It might be all the cough drops. I pushed the wrong button. I'm not sure.
Well, I'm very happy for you to have me on.
Well, I want to thank you. I know you're a very, very busy person, and you've got a lot going on, and to give us some time on a Saturday night, it's an honor to have you here, and I want to thank you for being here tonight. You know, Mars is it's the next leap in mankind. I remember I'm in my mid-50s, and of course I was very young when we went to the moon, and then of course the space shuttle programs and Mir and the International Space Station, and Mars is something that is really, really popular. Why don't you give us a little bit of a backstory, how you got involved with the Mars Society, and let's talk about the Mars Society and going to Mars.
Okay, sounds great. I was a very curious child, and my mother always answered all my questions at an age-appropriate level, of course. And I was kind of a tomboy. I played outside a lot. I looked up at the stars a lot. I loved reading. I read a lot of books. I spent time at the library. And my dad used to get National Geographic magazine, and it seemed like he had thousands of them on a giant bookshelf. And I would always read it because I was curious. And in 1988, I picked one up, and it had an article called Mission to Mars. And it was all about, and I still have it to this day, kept it all these years. Mm-hmm. It was an article about humans going to Mars, and it blew my mind. And I've been hooked on it ever since. And then a few years after that, I discovered the Mars Society and Dr. Robert Zubrin's work with the Mars Underground, which then became the Mars Society. And about 5 years ago, I joined them in Pasadena for the when Curiosity landed on Mars in 2012. And I've been involved ever since. And it was an amazing event. And every year we put on a great convention. And this year's no different. Wow. We are just advocates. We don't build any rockets. But we do bring people together from all over the world, and scientists, entrepreneurs, engineers, teachers. We have STEM events occasionally, and we just bring people together to collaborate and exchange ideas, and it's really wonderful.
Well, it sounds like it, and there's so many facets, Nicole, of people wanting to go to Mars. I mean, and maybe we could talk on some of these subjects a little bit. I believe NASA's in the process of building a heavy lift vehicle. The
Yes.
Chinese are looking to get to the moon. The Russians want to get to the moon and maybe to Mars. And then entrepreneurs like Elon Musk with SpaceX and ESA. I mean, it's not just NASA anymore. I mean, there's a whole group of people that want to get there.
Yes, and it's interesting that you mentioned all the other countries. And I think, my opinion, is that's what reignited the United States interest. because for a few years, the U.S. was like, nah, we're not going to go. And then when other countries started showing interest in realizing there could be resources there, the U.S. was like, well, we won the moon race. We certainly cannot lose the Mars race.
Right.
And I think that kind of gave them the inspiration to say, you know what, we really do need to do this, because it's gone back and forth over the past couple of administrations.
Exactly. Now, let me ask you, there was a private group, and I don't know if it was funded by Bigelow or not, but the Mars One group, of course, they
No,
were...
that's not. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I wasn't. His name came up a couple of times, but the Mars One group was talking about a launch of 2018 initially, and of course they were looking for funding and all kinds of other stuff. Is the Mars One team still together?
They are a group that is trying to basically fundraise their way to Mars by a variety of different measures, I would say. I don't know every detail of it, but they are still planning. The general opinion of most people is they will never be able to raise the $10 billion it takes to send just 2 or 3 humans to Mars. It'll take at least $10 billion. And that's the budget, the low budget way. But they also have plans to send rovers ahead of time and some other things. And I don't know that it's only a couple of years from now, and I don't think that they have the funding to do that. It's technologically possible. All of it's technologically possible, going to Mars. We can do that now. We just need the money to do it. So whoever does it will be the person who has the most money invested.
Of all the groups, Nicole, that are out there, which one do you think is going to get there first?
I am going to say SpaceX and Elon Musk. He's the CEO and founder. And or NASA in some kind of either separately or in some kind of collaboration. I think they have right now the best bet. There was actually just a little news clip when I was waiting about Bezos, the Blue Origins. They launched 3 reusable rockets, so they might be ramping up their game. So it'll be interesting to see between Bezos and Elon Musk who comes out on top. It's good. Competition is good.
Right.
Moves things forward.
Do you think that I know that the current the current White House administration talked early on about going back to the moon? Do you think that we'll see an Apollo type program before NASA moves on to Mars? Do you think we'll see a moonshot first?
Well, there are differing opinions. I know the president of the Mars Society, Dr. Robert Zubrin, wants us to skip the moon and go straight to Mars. I think that there will be people that go back to the moon, and I think there will be people that go to Mars. And you've got the Moon Society group and the Mars Society group, and it's just a matter of personal opinion, really, which idea you think's better. It's arguing over an opinion, really. They're both feasible. Obviously, we know we went to the moon, and Mars is definitely going to happen. And they'll both happen. It's just what order do we need to do it in? That's the argument. If we could just stop arguing and do it, that would be great.
Of all these groups, is there anybody that's a little bit closer than the others? Matter of fact, Nicole, let me stop you just for a second. We've got to take a quick... Well, it's actually the Fringe Radio Zone. Nicole Willett is our guest tonight. She is from the Mars Society. Again, Nicole, thank you so much for taking time to be with us here this evening.
Thank you for having me.
So we were talking right before the break, Nicole, about the companies that we thought would get there first. And, of course, you said Elon Musk's SpaceX group is the one that's going to get there first. Do they have a vehicle built to make the journey? And my other question is that are these other organizations, are they in the process of building a craft to get there? Well,
I know SpaceX has the Falcon Heavy, which is the rocket that they want to take to Mars. And they have the Dragon 2 capsule, which is where the astronauts would, like the bridge of the Enterprise, I guess you could say. That's where all the magic happens. So that's what SpaceX is working on. And I think they have a very good chance of making it. And I know that the Space Launch System in Orion is what NASA's working on right now. So I think it's going to be, the competition, as I said before, is going to be great. It will make everyone work harder, work better, work smarter, and it will move us forward much more quickly.
Do you think with the technology that we have and where we're at in these space programs among all these groups, Nicole, do you think that we can make a safe voyage? I actually, a couple years ago, well, it's been over 3 years ago, I had a guest on the show that was part of the Columbia team. She was a payload engineer, and she was pretty confident that we were many, many, many years away from having a safe vehicle. She felt that it was going to be, well, I won't go into what she said it was going to be, but it was going to be a disaster. Do you think that we have vehicles and crafts that can safely get people there and get them back home?
I think that, yes, we have them either get ready to go to the launch pad very soon, within the next 5 to 10 years for sure, if everything goes as planned. We could do it whenever we wanted, really, with the right plans and the right amount of money. So yes, we can definitely do it. I'm absolutely confident that that is going to happen. However, there's always a risk of loss of life.
Sure.
We've seen that with the Columbia and Challenger disasters. Every astronaut knows that's a chance you're taking, but it's a chance you're taking to move humanity forward. So it's a risk they're willing to take. And the astronauts have lots of testing, psychological testing, of course, to prepare them so they don't kind of go space crazy. So it will happen. It's going to happen. We have the technology to do it. It's just a matter of getting it to the launch pad during the right window, of course, because there's a 22-month launch window for the shortest trip.
Yeah, and that was a question. We had one of our listeners just email a question and said, could you ask Nicole, how long does it take to get to Mars, and is there a specific time when you can go that it's more feasible?
Yes. There is, every 22 months, there's a launch window where if you launch then, the next one's in 2018, if you launch then, you'll get to Mars in 6 months with current rocket technology. There are other people claiming that they have technology that could get us there in 2 to 4 weeks. I don't know a lot about that technology,
right,
so I can't really speak to that. I think that I'm a believer in anything's possible. So if that happens, that would be great. Then it wouldn't matter where we were in orbit so much if we wanted to leave whenever we wanted, if we had a really fast way to get there.
But it's under conventional launch with
it's 6 months.
6 months. That's a long time to be in a capsule.
Yes, it is.
And I would assume
it's a long time.
I would assume that they would really need a spaceship per se, because, I mean, to be locked in like an Apollo-sized capsule. I don't know how big. Maybe you could talk a little bit about SpaceX's capsule. Is it a fairly good size housing unit?
I have not seen their plans for their actual habitat. I've seen the bridge, as I said before, the Dragon 2. You would have to have a habitat for people to live in. You can't just keep them all in this little capsule like the Apollo mission for 6 months. That would be impossible. It would never work. People would that would be bad in every way. Right. You would have to have living quarters. You would have to have a way for them to relax. You would have to have a place for them to exercise. You would have to have somewhere where they could get gravity a couple times a day, a way for their muscles and bones to stay strong. It's not so much a problem if you're going to stay on Mars forever, but if you want to come back to Earth, you need to keep your muscles as strong as possible because Mars gravity is a third of Earth.
Right.
So you would have muscle atrophy if you didn't have some type of simulated gravity.
And I would assume that even though it's science fiction, movies like A Space Odyssey 2001, where there can be a circular ring that can turn, there are ways to simulate gravity and allow the astronauts to exercise and keep in shape.
Yes, and they also did that in the movie The Martian. I don't know if you saw it, but it
Yes.
was a wonderful, wonderful movie and book. And yes, that is a possibility, and scientists all over the world are discussing, how big does it have to be? How long do they have to spend in the simulated gravity for their muscles not to atrophy? Astronaut Scott Kelly just got back after a year in the International Space Station, and they're testing him and his twin brother for what kind of changes did he go through compared to his brother over the course of the year. And that's a big study right now because we're going to be sending people to Mars, right, and they're going to be on a spaceship for a long time. So what are the physical problems that could occur, and how can we prevent that from happening as much as possible?
Exactly. Did Kelly? I saw on one of the internet news channels on the computer. I saw him after he landed. He seemed like he was pretty much able to walk under his own power and navigated pretty well.
Yes, they have a lot of exercise equipment or places for them. I don't know if it's a lot, but it's enough for them to, I think they have to do 2 or 4 hours a day, and they're kind of strapped down to this machine, and they have to exercise for so long in order to keep them, their muscles, the ability to walk when they come back home. You lose muscle mass and bone mass, so they really have to be diligent about staying on their treadmill in space.
Exactly. Carol from the West Coast, from California, writes in. Nicole, she asks, what does Nicole think about the psychological aspects of adjustments to Mars living?
Well, I think that is probably one of the biggest concerns besides getting people there physically safely. Psychologically, you have to be stimulated in order to stay healthy. When you have 6 people in a little habitat for 6 months and you have no interaction with others, there could be problems. So
right.
You have to really pick the right group of people to live together for that long. And it doesn't necessarily mean you just put 6 real smart people on a spaceship because they know how to do things. You need 6 people that are above average intelligence, I would say, but that are also able to work as a team, to get along, to not panic when there's an emergency.
Right.
Because you're going to have 6 months of very mellow existence. And then all of a sudden, when you land, it takes 7 minutes to get from outer space to the surface of Mars. And you have to be prepared for anything. So you're going to be just kind of doing your day-to-day routine, and then within 7 minutes, everything is going to be completely different. So Mars would be like living in, the desert of Arizona.
Right.
Not the temperature,
right.
just
right.
the view. It's going to be very stark looking, but it's very beautiful. You can, everybody knows you can go on NASA's website and pull up pictures of the landscape. It's incredibly beautiful.
Oh, without a doubt, without a doubt. I mentioned about Bigelow because I saw some different things where he was making some what appeared to be almost like inflatable habitats. Is he one of the participants that's maybe thinking about a habitat for Mars? And do you think that maybe they would send a cargo ship of sorts to Mars first to have supplies there before humans actually got there?
I don't really know a lot about Bigelow's plan, but I do know the Mars Direct plan, which was presented to NASA by Dr. Zubrin in the late 80s, early 90s maybe, had that idea where you send supplies and a habitat first, and you send a mechanism that turns with some hydrogen that turns the Martian air into rocket fuel. And by the time the astronauts land, they already have enough fuel to launch back to Earth when they need to. And then those habs that they sent ahead of time can be interconnected and become the living quarters as more and more people land on the planet. It's an excellent idea.
Do you think, Nicole, that with your own experience with being involved with the Mars Society, do you think that this may be a one-way trip for some people, and it'll be the first steps of colonization, or do you think that initially the plan going in for right now is get people there, see how they do, and then get those people back home?
There are different plans from different countries and organizations. Mars One, I think they plan on leaving people there, one-way trip to Mars, from my recollection. Elon Musk has said he wants to put 80,000 people on Mars to build a Mars colony. A lot of people are saying it's a one-way trip. But in my opinion, we have the technology. If we can get there, eventually, if you want to come back, if you would want to come back to Earth, you could probably do it. I'm going to say that that's a possibility, that you could either go and stay and colonize, or you could come back at a later date when the technology gets to that point.
Very interesting. You mentioned about the movie The Martian. I thought it was and that was a question that Tracy sent in to us. She said, Nicole, was The Martian pretty realistic, or was it Hollywood?
The Martian is very realistic. There's a couple little science things that are off a little bit, but without them, it wouldn't be as good of a story.
Right.
But it's very realistic, and it is the most Mars-like movie for anybody who thinks they want to go to Mars. That's kind of how it would be. You'd have these plain white habitats. You have your little trunk of personal items, because it's really heavy to lift things. It costs a lot of money to lift heavy things off Earth.
Right.
So you would have to download movies and disco music if that's what you like. That's what they did in the movie, to your computer and take that with you. And eventually, like Vint Cerf, the Google evangelist, they call him, he wants to have the internet go to Mars and to go to the whole solar system. So when we do go to other planets, that we could live stream video from home, and eventually, I'm sure, have servers on Mars where they could have their own internet. But anything, I think we will colonize the planet, and anything is possible, in my opinion, when we get there.
Interesting. One of your questions, which was really a good one, your question was, if there is life on Mars, what's the ethical justification for sending humans there that may render extant life on Mars extinct? You want to talk about that a little bit and your views on that?
Yes. I believe, and many scientists now will say and admit, that all of the nutrients are on Mars. All of the water's there and was there. Everything needed for life is there. The minerals, the water, the sunlight, and there probably was life there. And maybe some, that I'm talking about microbial life.
Okay.
Maybe there is some, eking out a little niche somewhere under a rock or in a cave. I study astrobiology, so there are a lot of extreme organisms on Earth that we know factually can withstand very harsh radiation. We know there are organisms that can withstand the vacuum of space even. We know there are organisms that can live without sunlight at all, with very little water for thousands of years, if no water at all for thousands of years, and then come back to life. So we know there are organisms that can live just about anywhere. So if they're there and we go there, we won't sterilize the whole planet by just having a little colony. But rinsing out your mouth every morning with mouthwash, you kill billions of bacteria.
Correct.
So it would kind of be like that. It'd be great to study the organism if there are microorganisms there, but it's no worse than rinsing out your mouth every morning.
All right, everybody, welcome back. Nicole Willett is our guest tonight. She is from the Mars Society. Nicole, we were talking right before the break about, again, the question being, being cautious about destroying what's already there. And it sounds like as long as we're careful, we're okay.
Yes. As long as it's microbial organisms, we're not really ethically doing that much damage.
Gotcha. All right, let me ask you something a little fringy, okay?
Okay.
We are seeing people, there are pictures of Curiosity sending pictures back.
Yes.
And now, of course, anything with the right light shined on it, with the right shadow shined on it, can take on many different aspects. But there has been some stuff that has come back from Curiosity. I don't think it's anything that's photoshopped, that appears like maybe it's not quite natural to that habitat. Like maybe at one time there was something there. What are your thoughts on that?
I am a believer that it is entirely possible that there were multi-celled organisms on Mars, and the rover may be seeing fossils. That's possible. Any true scientist will never say that's impossible, because it's ridiculous to say that that's impossible. All of the elements are there that are needed for life. And we know it had a thicker atmosphere, and we know it had oceans. So a true scientist will say, follow the science.
Right.
And if the science is telling you, oh, there's a fossil, well, we should send some people there to look at it. So I believe it's completely possible.
Do you think at one time there might have been humans there? Many years ago.
I think that it is possible that intelligent life has crept up in many corners of our galaxy and universe.
That's fair. Okay. Good.
There's a lot of 5 billion years is a long time.
Yeah, and when you look up at that sky at night on a moonless night, and especially out in a rural area, and you see all those stars, to think we're here alone, I think is, well, you never know.
Arrogant.
Arrogant. Exactly. Bob from the East Coast writes in, says, does Nicole know if there are certain areas on Mars that would be more hospitable to sustaining human life than others?
I would say the equator, if you could find a nice cave near the equator, that would be the best, because it's the warmest near the equator, and the caves would protect us from the radiation, because Mars doesn't have a true magnetosphere, which is what we have that protects us from the harmful charged particles from the sun. But Mars does have little tiny pockets of magnetosphere to protect humans. So if we could, the perfect scenario would be find one of those little magnetically protected areas with a cave near the equator. That would be the perfect place. Gotcha.
Very interesting. Another question along the fringy lines. Does Gino writes in, says, does Nicole think that we might have already practiced living on Mars by way of secret trips to the moon? And I think what he means by we is other countries. Do you think that that the United States was the last visitor to the moon, or maybe some of these other countries have been going there regularly or as of recent?
I'm afraid to answer that question.
Okay.
Because my personal opinion is different from my professional opinion. If that helps clear up what I would say, that's what I'm going to say.
Gotcha. Okay. Another question that just came in for you. It said, Nicole, why has there never been a return probe that would bring back artifacts or samples from Mars for examination? Is that something that's in place? It seems like all the probes are one way.
There is the Mars 2020 rover, which is supposed to launch in 2020.
Okay.
It doesn't have a real name yet. That's its working name. It is supposed to have what they call a cache, a C-A-C-H-E, a little tiny, kind of like a coffee can size mechanism, and it has several different compartments in it. And that rover is supposed to put samples of different rocks from different places. And it's very similar to the Curiosity rover, same size. They're kind of using the same blueprint. So they have this cache, they call it, and they're going to store it on Mars until they get it back to Earth someday. But that's not in the plan. So I think it's kind of a weird plan because they don't have any plans to bring it back, but they have a plan to cache it there and wait until they get a plan to bring it back. So
now,
that's what's happening with that.
Now, some of these rovers have like onboard labs, don't they, where they can actually drill into things and pick up things and do analysis on the rover itself?
Yes. Curiosity has an entire, basically a miniaturized laboratory on its back, and they do all kinds of research. They've discovered all kinds of cool chemicals and geochemistry and all kinds of interesting mechanisms happening on the surface of Mars. It's fascinating, really, that they miniaturized it, and that Curiosity, being the size of an SUV, landed the way it landed and landed perfectly and immediately started sending pictures to Earth.
Yeah.
So they've been, the Spirit and Opportunity each had a rock abrasion tool that would scrape off the outer part of the rock and then put a microscope lens on it and send back pictures. And Opportunity and Spirit landed in 2004, but Opportunity is still running. So it's had a long life. It was only supposed to last 90 days, and it's still doing science.
Really?
So, yes, it's amazing.
Is that when
amazing.
When it gets its solar panels recharged, it comes back to life again?
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yes, and it's fairly healthy for a 12-year-old rover on Mars.
Interesting. I think I might have asked this before, but it was on your list too. How close are we? I mean, what do you think is a realistic timeline for, now again, you mentioned about conventional flight. Yes, I've seen different things on ion drives and, laser drives and all kinds of other stuff. But realistically, when do you think we're going to see a mission actually launch?
My hope is mid-2020s. My hope is tomorrow.
Right.
To be perfectly honest. But at the latest, I would say mid-2030s at the latest, which in my opinion is way too far out.
Yes.
But hopefully Elon Musk will get it done and will fly in the 2020s, which is right around the corner.
Is he actively building to get us there?
Oh yes, his heavy launch vehicle, his Falcon Heavy lifter. It looks like a regular rocket with two rockets on the side, and that's the whole purpose of it is to lift us off to Mars, to have enough lift for the payload that they're going to need to launch 6 humans to Mars.
Wow. Any other probes going to Mars? Are there any other countries that are sending probes to Mars?
ExoMars, the European Space Agency, just launched that within the last month, and it's going to get there in September or October, from my recollection, if I'm right. And it is going to look at signs of life on Mars. So we have all of these different orbiters, rovers, looking for signs of life. It's the big question, right? Are we alone in the universe?
Right.
And the more we find out from Hubble, and the more planets we find from Kepler and the other telescopes, and then James Webb Space Telescope, which is bigger and better than Hubble, but we love Hubble. is going to be able to actually take images directly of extrasolar planets on a regular basis. So the universe the breadth of our knowledge, the universe is getting much, much bigger. And the possibility of, finding an Earth 2.0 is just coming clearer every day that is going to happen. And we'll be studying atmospheres of other planets within the next couple of years, like knowing what the signatures of life are. Like on Earth, we have 20% oxygen atmosphere. That doesn't happen unless something's replenishing it using photosynthesis,
right,
the way it does on Earth. So we can see those signatures, and I know I got a little off topic, but...
No. No. It's cool, Nicole. It's cool.
It's awesome.
It is awesome. Let's talk a little bit about... one other question came in, and then I want to talk about your book and whatever you would like to cover in the next few minutes. Of course, we're talking about Mars. Another planet that comes up, or moon that comes up, is Europa. Again, there's some people that, I shouldn't say some people, but we hear talk that maybe there could be life there, a planet that's all ice with oceans underneath it. Are there any plans for probes to go to Europa?
Yes, actually, Europa is amazing. And when I was in college, I did my senior seminar presentation to the entire faculty on Europa, and they thought I was crazy at the time because they'd never heard of any of this. And but I always send them emails when news comes out about it. But Europa has an ocean. Enceladus, which is the moon of Saturn, has an ocean. There are several moons out there that have huge oceans under the ice. And Europa does have a mission being planned and that has been approved. I don't know when it will launch because it just recently, within the last 6 months or so, was approved. But what they want to do is land and somehow either melt or drill through the ice and send cameras down and other equipment to test and see if there's any bacteria or fish or, mermaids. I don't know.
Sure.
Something's probably under there because when we get the readings, especially from the Cassini spacecraft around Saturn, took some readings of the moon Enceladus because water spews out of it, and they detect simple organic molecules. So if that's happening on Enceladus, which is down the road from Europa, and we know they have similar mechanisms happening, there's probably something living there. I'm going to guess all these ocean moons, that's where the action's happening.
Gotcha. And Europa's quite a ways out there, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Yes, it is one of the Galilean moons of Jupiter.
Interesting.
So it was one of the moons discovered by Galileo. I hope I don't have my moons mixed up. There's a lot of them.
There is. Your book, you're writing a book out called Soul. Tell us about that.
Well, a couple of summers ago, I was inspired by some activities my family was participating in, and I started just writing little tiny bits of a story. And I've been working on it since then, and it is a Martian adventure and love story that takes place mostly on Mars, but they do go to the moon, and there are some flashback sequences, and there's a planned, actually, ironically, you mentioned Europa. In the book, in one of the chapters, someone gets sent to a Europa mission. So it's funny that you mentioned that. But it's called Soul, and the website is soulnovel.com, S-O-L, because a Martian day is a soul. And it's a book about souls and people finding their best path in life. So I thought it was a nice double entendre to use the S-O-L, soul.
How long is a Martian day?
A Martian day is 24 hours and 39 minutes, and the axial tilt is 24 degrees. So Mars has a day, an axial tilt, and seasons just like the Earth.
Interesting. Very interesting. We've got just a couple minutes left. The next convention, the next Mars Society convention, where is that going to be held, and how can people get to that? And could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, certainly. It will be, we're going back to Washington, D.C. because it's right before the election, and our president wants to, the president of the Mars Society, wants to kind of try to get the best votes in for science and technology and human missions to Mars and try to inspire the congressmen. We're going to the Catholic University again, the beautiful campus. It's at the Priscilla Hall, and it's open to anybody who wants to attend. You have to register, and there's a fee, of course, on marssociety.org, M-A-R-S, society.org, and it's the website's up. You can click register for the convention, and we will see you guys in D.C. It's a great event.
Well, it sounds like anybody that has interest, and we should all have interest in something like this because it's so amazing. Nicole, I want to thank you so much for being here tonight. Again, I apologize for my voice. It was an honor to have you here, and I would love to get you back maybe in the fall, if that would be okay, if we could stay in touch, maybe after the convention. Because again, this is so amazing. It really is, and people need to get behind it. And I know with everything going on in the world, it's tough. It's tough, but it is the next great adventure without a doubt. So I wish you a great weekend. Again, it was an honor to have you here. Thank you so much. We'll keep in touch, and let's get you back on. And good luck with your book.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
Okay, my friend. Have a good night and take care now.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.